Next, it's increasingly likely 2024 will be the hottest year on record in spite of July ending a 13-month streak of monthly temperature records. This coming from the EU's climate monitor this Thursday. The Copernicus Climate Change Service said last month that it was the second warmest on record books going back to 1940. 1940, only slightly cooler than July 2023. Climate is a big issue, of course, and joining us from New York is Ashvin Dayal, Senior Vice President of the Rockefeller Foundation. The green power gap and the energy hypocrisy, your report just concluded, highlights shortcomings in expectation and execution of policy and practice. Always it's the poorer countries who come off worse, isn't it? Can you give us a sense of the problem as you see it? Clearly, we've been talking about climate change on a broader basis, but you're homing in on energy, renewable energy, and those who are winners and losers.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon. Yes, I mean, when we think about the term sort of climate hypocrisy, we're faced with a situation where, in fact, the people suffering the most from those heat waves are living in energy-poor countries who are least responsible for the climate impact that we have today. So our report really points out that we have two futures ahead of us. We either have a future in which these developing countries, and we've studied about 72 countries that are energy poor, they have development aspirations, they want to grow their economies, and they're going to need to consume, in most cases, about 10 times the amount of electricity per capita than they are today. And the question is, will that growth in demand between now and 2050 happen with a renewable, clean energy pathway, or will it happen on the basis of fossil fuel development, which is very much the right of these countries if that's the path that is chosen, because there isn't the financing and political support made available for the alternative path. And so the report really points out what a massive effort the world needs to pull together in order to help 72 countries actually deliver clean, abundant energy and lift hundreds of millions of people out of the situations of poverty or vulnerability and improve their economic future.
Developing nations always look to the fact that the countries that we today call the West, it started with Britain, didn't it, in 1750. They all industrialized using fossil fuels. And of course, as they became more modern, more industrial, the pollution went up. Now, these days, as you've just intimated, that if the developing countries will develop using the same process, it might be something that the world cannot actually take in terms of the climate change that will enforce. So what is the solution? Is it the technology exchange? Because the renewable energy processes are there, aren't they?
Yes, and so you're right. It is technology exchange, it is financing, it is political will. And the point you make is absolutely right, Mark. We don't want 72 energy-poor countries to grow their economies on the back of fossil fuels the same way that the United Kingdom did during the Industrial Revolution. We simply can't, as a planet, sustain that. We will probably go not just beyond 2 degrees, but beyond a 2.5 degree scenario if that happens. Because as I said, these countries are going to grow their demand. They are going to grow their economies. The irony is that if you look at the continent of Africa, it has 60% of the solar resources available to it, yet it only gets less than 1% of the investment into solar technologies. These are expensive technologies, even though the prices have come down. But the good news is the way we electrify communities has changed. We have many more decentralized or local energy solutions. It doesn't have to be these large coal-fired power plants generating through centralized grids. We have the technologies, we have the business models, but we need the financing and the technology transfer that is going to be made, that needs to be made available to many of these countries, or we will indeed end up in a 2.5 degree planet world.
You made me just think then of my friends in Botswana who I've just been speaking to, journalist friends, to get the sort of latest quote from their 200-meter runner winning a gold medal. They're celebrating there. On other sides, though, in Botswana, I was there a couple of years ago, they were celebrating putting in a water main into the south of the capital. It seems unthinkable that people don't get running water into their homes, but that was something they were celebrating doing, a major advancement. Botswana trying to get into also the idea of creating its own Silicon Valley type structure within its country, trying to sort of move on 2-3 leaps to create its own sort of post-industrial revolution and make things happen there. Is that something that has to come from within Africa, or something that needs that sort of impetus from the West, shall we say?
Well, I think it's a global effort that is needed. I mean, what Botswana is trying to do is actually what many countries can try to do, which is leapfrog and take advantage of these new digital technologies, renewable technologies, battery storage technologies. Think about the mobile phone revolution 20 years ago and how so many countries were able to transform communications as a result of not relying on traditional mainline infrastructure. Prices have come down, but no country around the world has actually fully electrified itself without a significant amount of public sector finance. And you're dealing with countries that are already heavily indebted, that have had promises made around financing for renewables, are being expected to deliver commitments around net zero and their nationally determined contributions in terms of what they will do to reduce their emissions, but are not being backed up with the support that's needed. I mean, we're very encouraged by the recent announcement, for example, by the World Bank and the African Development Bank to increase their financing to electrify 300 million Africans over the next 6 years. It's a mammoth task, and we're sort of getting behind them to try and make that effort a reality. But we're going to need a lot more partnerships and commitments like that around the world. And the impacts on the ground are transformational. This doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. I've personally traveled all over Africa and in South Asia and seen the transformation that clean energy can bring to a local community when farmers now have the ability to have cold storage on site so they can protect their produce rather than having to sell it at a lower price, where carpenters can move from manual appliances to mechanized tools and quadruple their productivity. This is local economic development. This is what the green economy, which is this sort of jargony term, actually means for people's lives. And so we have a real opportunity for this to be the climate and development project of the next 10 years that can transform hundreds of millions of people's lives.
Ashvin, Dayal, thank you very much for telling us about this and flagging up to us the issues. 3.8 billion people across 72 countries with insufficient electricity to access modern opportunity and prosperity. We heard it from Ashvin and all about the possibilities of getting past that. And thank you, sir, for joining us. Ashvin Dayal of the Rockefeller Foundation. Thank you very much indeed.